My name is Dr. Ken Dutton-Register, and we're here at the Precinct in Brisbane Meanjin, land of the Yagara and Turrbal people. Now, it's National Science Week, and this year's theme is glass, more than meets the eye. And we're here today because it's a glass incubator of ideas, innovations, startups, and scale-ups. And we're going to be talking to some of these scale-ups to see how they're making a real-world impact using science and technology. We're here at Hypersonics and we're about to talk to Professor Michael Smart, CTO and founder. Let's go have a chat. Ooh, I wonder if he's in. Oh, there he is.
Hey Ken, welcome.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
So tell us a little bit more about Hypersonics.
Yeah, so we're a small startup company here in Queensland, and we're building hypersonic aircraft that are powered by engines called scramjets.
Are scramjets rockets?
No, they're quite different from rockets. They're actually an air-breathing engine. So we use oxygen from the air, we suck air in, and we burn our hydrogen fuel with that air, and then we generate thrust. So it's quite different from a rocket, which basically has to carry all its oxygen, and it's essentially a large firecracker.
What are you trying to do with these rockets? I mean, is it something that I can catch a lift on or something else?
No, it's something else, Ken, for the moment anyway. So our first application is actually to try to take small satellites up to low Earth orbit. So, the next 10 years, there's actually going to be more than 50,000 small satellites launched into space. And we want to do that in a much more environmentally friendly and greener way. So we want to fly to space like an aircraft rather than be launched like a rocket.
What do these scramjets look like?
Yeah, so we have one over here. We have our technology demonstrators. It's a hypersonic aircraft. It's called DART, and it's very sleek, as you can see, and it's powered by a single scramjet engine, which uses green hydrogen as fuel. And it flies at Mach 7, which is 7 times the speed of sound.
If I caught a lift on that, would I survive?
You would survive when it was flying. Perhaps as we boost up to Mach 7, you might struggle a little bit, but no, flying at Mach 7, you just have a fantastic view of the Earth as you're flying.
How big are these rockets?
Yes, so this DART is actually a technology demonstrator. It's actually only 3 meters long. But our space launch system, which we're working on, would be of the order of 12 meters long, so the size of a small aircraft. And, and that's the key thing. We're talking about hypersonic aircraft as opposed to rockets.
Tell me more about what made you get into space?
Yeah, so when I was a kid, I still remember when Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. My dad and I watched that, and it was a really formative time for me. And I was always interested in space, and when I was a kid, I really wanted to work at NASA. That was my goal.
And what was it like working at NASA?
And and I fulfilled my goal, which was awesome. And it was just such a great place to work. So many interesting people doing all sorts of weird and wonderful things and really trying to come up with new ideas. And that was really the really great fun part of working at NASA.
Oh, that's amazing. So tell me more about how you got started with this. I mean, is this something that you launched by yourself or funded off your own house deposit?
Starting a small company actually requires a lot more skills than just the technology. So I actually started the company with a friend of mine from university who's had a long business career, and together, we combined together the commercial acumen and then the technology to form a growing company. So it takes lots of different skills.
How many aircraft have you launched to date?
Yeah, so in the company, we haven't launched any. We're planning to launch our first DART in about 2 years from now. But when I was working at the University of Queensland, we actually launched about 7 different hypersonic payloads. So we've done quite a few flights.
If you're launching in 2 years, can I come and watch?
So, well, certainly you can. So we'll definitely be live streaming it during our launch phase, so that the whole world can see it. Obviously, at the range where we do the launch is a bit dangerous, but we'll definitely doing the live streaming and the Twitter feeds and all those things. And so hopefully it'll create quite a bit of excitement.
And so, last question: what's the end goal? What's the vision? Where do you see this technology going?
Yeah. So one of the goals is to make space much greener. Much more environmentally friendly, but also the technology is applicable to flying from Sydney to London in 2 hours at Mach 7. So, we'd love to be able to create our own airline and fly people across the world and much more quickly than they can right now.
Having done some long haul flights, that sounds amazing. Professor Michael Smart, thank you very much. let's go check out our next startup. And next up, we're going to be talking to Juliet Murphy, CEO and co-founder of FloodMap. I'm pretty sure she's in. Let's have a look. Ah, there she is. Oh, great.
Hello, Ken.
Hey,
How are
Juliet.
you?
Yeah,
Good to
really
see you.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome to our office.
Oh, this is fantastic. I love this green wall.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. We just moved into this space recently in February. It's a great new home.
So tell us a little bit about FloodMap.
So FloodMap, our vision is to build a safer future. So we help emergency managers with technology for flood forecasting and real-time mapping intelligence before, during, and after a flood event to help them save lives and prevent damage.
Sounds like a pretty important mission. I do see some very water-themed meeting room names. Tell us more about that.
That's right, Ken. So this is our watershed room, our basin room, and our catchment room, which is a little bit of a flood engineering joke. They're all the name for really the same thing, but it just goes with the theme of really what we do here at FloodMap. So come on, I'll show you around the rest of the office. It's beautiful space, and we've got a really incredible multidisciplinary team here of flood engineers, hydrologists, data scientists, software engineers, and creative people.
So tell us how the idea came about.
Come and take a seat. Yeah, I'll tell you. So I studied environmental engineering and then went on to specialize in water resources, and so everything hydrology, hydraulics, and flood modeling. And so it was my real area of expertise. And I think after experiencing the 2011 flood events and seeing my friends impacted, lose their homes, and then 2 years later another flood event in Calgary 2013, I really wanted to use my skills to try and better fill the gap for flood modelling and emergency management to help people.
And what was it like sort of taking that step to become an entrepreneur and starting a business?
Yeah, a real journey, Ken. I think the best way I can describe it is a roller coaster. Lots of ups, but lots of downs. So many hurdles and obstacles to achieve, and taking a brand new technology like ours, all the investment into research and development when you don't even know what the model performance is going to be like, and then to commercialize the technology. Look, it's been challenging. We'll walk around the rest of the office while I tell you. But also, there's been just really high up points, and I think the thing I'm most grateful about at FloodMap is to work with just the team of the most incredible people, and I'm so honoured that people this smart, have joined us in our mission to do what we do. So yeah, we're walking by the data science team at the moment. So these guys are doing incredibly smart work. So they have experience in computational fluid dynamics and data science to forecast flooding before it happens, to help emergency managers distribute better early warnings for evacuation planning, and for asset owners to prevent damage.
And what advice would you have for other people sort of looking to start their own business or get an idea off the ground?
Look, I'd say first, before you get an idea off the ground, start a business, you want to get industry experience to really understand the industry that you're working in, the people, the regulatory challenges, the politics, understand where the pain points are, and then look at how to solve that problem. And that's ultimately what's going to set you up for success.
Okay, so the problem sounds key. I could see some really interesting images over on these computers. Could you tell me what's happening here?
Yeah, so this is our incredible flood operations team in action. So these guys have experience in flood engineering and hydraulics, and they are running our hydraulics model and generating FloodMap forecast, nowcast, and postcast extents to help emergency managers respond to flood events. So this type of data is used by emergency services for planning swift water rescues, streamlining the recovery, and of course understanding the people, property, and infrastructure that are impacted by the flood.
So I imagine this technology was used pretty heavily in recent flooding events here in Australia?
Yeah, that's right. So we were really glad that we could support Queensland Fire and Emergency Services and Queensland Reconstruction Authority with their response to the flooding. And yeah, our goal is to just better serve communities, because the flooding that we've seen has just been devastating and heartbreaking. And I think that's what makes us all so passionate about the work that we do here.
And then looking to the to the future, like where do you see FloodMap going and the impact it can make?
Look, I think there's so much impact this kind of technology can make, and ultimately we want to take the technology global to, help save lives and prevent damage all over the world. We're starting with some work in the US there. That's our next big market. And one of the projects we've been working on is this one here, where we've actually integrated FloodMap Nowcast real-time mapping to overlay it to understand the depth of flooding over roads, to predict flooded roads in real time dynamically, and then fed that in as an API into Waze to give alerts and reroute traffic around flooded roads. So this is ultimately meaning that drivers are avoiding flooding and being safer on the roads. So yeah, this kind of technology has huge potential to save lives and help more people.
Oh, this is fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Juliet. It's been an absolute pleasure. Lots of exciting things happening. And
Such a pleasure, Ken. Thank you so much for coming to visit.
Thanks for showing us around. And now we're here to talk to Karen Sanders, the co-founder of Real Serious Games and CEO of the Queensland XR Hub. I can see her right here. Hey, Karen.
Hey,
Nice to see
Ken,
you.
how are you? Yeah, come on through. Welcome.
So, Karen, tell us more about Real Serious Games.
Real Serious Games is an XR content creation company that was founded in about 2009. And we've got over 30 staff here in Brisbane, and we've been developing applications for training in the mining and engineering sectors. So come on through, I'll show you a little bit about the XR technology. There's so a lot of what we do is delivered on headsets. Right, so you get the headsets, there are different varieties of headsets like these, and there are also augmented reality headsets. So Microsoft has the HoloLens, for instance, and essentially you're developing an application, like an application on your mobile phone, but it's on a headset.
And so when it goes on your head, like where does that transport you to? Is it?
Oh, Ken, you could go anywhere you want to, So
Can I go to space?
Yeah, I can put this on and I'll be on Mars, And so the beauty is you can really take people to anything that you would imagine. You can take people there. Yeah.
And so what is the benefit of using this technology for the organisations that you provide it for?
For us, we're doing a lot of workforce training. So in that instance, the application that would be on the device would be something like field training. So if you're working in the rail sector, for instance, and you've got to learn how to undertake a service on a train, and trains are really long, half a kilometre long, and we can take that experience that you'd normally be trained in the yards, bring that into the headset, and we can train people more safely on how to undertake their their future roles. Yeah, so
I imagine it's a little bit more engaging as well. I mean, do you use gamification
yes, absolutely.
strategies?
Yeah. So come through, keep walking. So Emma's over here. Emma's the operations manager for the Queensland XR Hub, and she's doing some testing on a virtual reality application right now, and it really is around that, developing on the computer, testing in the headset. That type of thing. Yeah.
And so tell us more about the Queensland XR Hub. What's the main purpose there?
Yeah, so you're standing at the Queensland XR Hub today, and the hub's around, it's like a traditional technology hub that we're looking to activate an ecosystem around XR. So how do we find all of the startups, scale-ups, connect them with government, industry, investment, and really make some noise about the opportunities that these technologies can provide to government and industry. Yeah,
it sounds like a really important initiative, but I have to say, I've seen this in the corner.
Oh yes,
what is this contraption over here?
Yeah, I've got to show you.
Please
this.
tell us about it.
Yeah, so this is it's called Cat VR, but it's a device that enables you strap yourself in so you're safe. You put a headset on here, but it enables you to run at pace through a computer game environment, right? So I can be running through a city, but I come back and land on the same spot, if it makes any sense. But you watch people on YouTube and they are sprinting when they're using this device and playing games. Yeah, so it's kind of fun.
It
Yeah.
looks like a cool contraption.
Yeah, yeah.
But one question though is like, how did you sort of get into this? Did you sort of see yourself getting into XR game development when you were a kid?
No, not at all. So I did a civil engineer. I'm a civil engineer by profession, and I worked on some major projects where we got to build 3D CAD models of refineries and stuff, and we'd use those models to communicate to the workforce what was going to be built. And when the opportunity to get involved in VR came around, it was really exciting because you could see how if you could bring those models into the headsets, you could take people to, onto site anywhere and start training them. So no, I had no idea that I was going to head down this pathway. Yeah.
That's so crazy. Karen, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks very much, Ken. Thank you.
It's been really fascinating to see where all these different companies are going and how it's making an impact using science and technology. Well, that's a wrap. It has been so great to see the innovation happening here in Queensland and the impact that it's having on the world. Now, if you want more science, there are a ton of events happening in this year's National Science Week. So check out the Inspiring Australia Queensland website. That's it from me. I'll catch you next time.